So camping in the winter used to be something that I would avoid entirely. I was just afraid of being cold and uncomfortable and even miserable. But over the past few years, I've really been focusing on dialing in my winter camping system. And to be honest, it's kind of been a process of trial and error. So today I'll talk about my current winter camping system, and I'll share some of the mistakes that I've made along the way so that hopefully you don't make the same mistakes. So my first mistake was not using a sleeping pad, and more importantly, not paying attention to the R value rating of my sleeping surface. For the better part of a year, I slept on a regular generic air mattress that was comfortable in the summer, but offered very little thermal insulation during the winter. So I was basically freezing myself from underneath. I did a bit of research on sleeping pads and learned that all sleeping pads are required to have an R value rating, which is a measure of thermal resistance. A high R value rating means that a pad is better at resisting the transfer of heat from your body to the ground. An R value of 5 or higher is recommended for temperatures below freezing. The pad that I've got here is just a cheap one from Walmart. It only has an R value of 2.1, but the good news is you can stack multiple pads on top of each other to achieve a higher combined R value. So if I wanted a higher R value, I would just stack 2 of these together and I can get a combined value of 4.2. So mistake number 2 is going to be poor sleep attire. Warm pajamas and thick socks are not enough to cut it when the temperature drops below freezing. So after spending a few really cold nights at camp, I decided to dial in my sleep attire. So I'm using a warm gear underlayer from Under Armour. This serves as my base thermal layer, and on top of that I usually just do a fleece outer layer. I do some thick wool socks to keep my feet warm. Then of course I wear a beanie to prevent losing heat from my head, and on really cold nights I might throw in a down jacket and even a pair of thick ski gloves. I also make sure to completely change my clothes before calling it a night. I try to prevent bringing in any sweat or moisture into my sleeping bag, so I always have a clean, dry set of clothes ready to go before bedtime. Like most winter camping newbies, I thought a propane heater and a warm sleeping bag would be all that I need to survive. While a propane heater might be the cheapest option for warmth, it's definitely not the safest or the most convenient. The buddy heaters are an often debated topic in the camping world, but after owning one for a while, I wouldn't recommend using it as a primary heat source. A little buddy heater not only requires ventilation and carbon monoxide monitoring, but it also requires you to be awake while using it. The heater is top heavy and it's not the most stable. It has an automatic shutoff switch, but it still produces a hot surface, and it's not recommended to run while you're asleep. I'm not proud to admit that I have accidentally fallen asleep with this heater running, and had I knocked it over in my sleep, it would have been a pretty bad situation. My preferred source of warmth is an electric heating pad like this one that I bought on Amazon. It does require an external power source, so it is more of an investment, but I don't have to worry about switching it on and off during the night. And more importantly, I don't have to worry about accidentally burning down my tent while I sleep. If you don't want to invest in a power station just yet, you can also buy a pad that comes with its own rechargeable power pack. Those usually only hold enough juice to get you through one night, but it is a more cost-effective option. And if you do decide to go with an externally powered sleeping pad, I would recommend a bigger unit like the Jackery Explorer 1000 V2. It has 1000 watts of power, whereas my starter Jackery only has 300 watts. I quickly learned that this will only power my sleeping pad for about one night, whereas the 1000 will power it for 3 nights plus. And just a quick pro tip, if you are shopping for something like this, I would recommend just putting it in your Amazon shopping cart and then waiting for a holiday like Labor Day or Black Friday. The prices usually drop significantly. Before I move on, I want to mention that I don't completely dislike the little buddy heater. I just don't recommend it as a primary heat source. I still use mine as a quick warm-up around camp, and I keep it nearby as a backup just in case I have an issue or a failure with my primary heat system. Which brings me to the next common mistake, which is no backup plan. So if you've been camping with me for a while, you know that I don't always use the most high-end gear. So the possibility of having some gear malfunction or just having something fail on me is always a possibility. So for this reason, I think it's always important to have a backup plan. So whether it's packing an extra heating pad, a portable heater, or just camping in close proximity to your vehicle, I think having a backup plan is definitely an important part of winter camping. So I can't talk about winter camping without talking about sleeping bags and their ratings. Some bags will have a separate rating for comfort and survival, while other bags will only have one of those ratings. So like the name implies, a comfort rating is just the temperature where you will be comfortable in the bag, assuming other conditions are normal, like you're dry and you're wearing the proper clothes, while a survival rating is a temperature that you can survive at, but you definitely won't be comfortable. I like to keep a reasonable barrier from the comfort rating, and I like to keep at least a 20-degree buffer from the survival rating. For example, here in South Texas, most cold nights get down into the low 30s, so I use a bag that is comfort rated at 20 degrees. But if you plan to camp in much colder weather, be sure to find yourself a high-quality bag that is appropriately rated for the coldest expected temperature of your camping trip. So the final mistake is just not giving winter camping a try. Like I mentioned before, there was a time when I would pack away all of my camping gear for the winter and just wait for better weather. But after giving it a try, I realized that winter camping could offer me better access to campsites, and it could also offer more privacy while camping. I've been doing most of my camping recently in my home state of Texas, and us Texans are not necessarily known for our love of the cold weather. So if I'm able to plan a camping trip during a freeze warning or even just during a cold, rainy weekend, I can often have an entire park all to myself. So I've really come to love camping in the winter, and if you have not tried it yet, I hope you decide to give it a try. And I also hope that you found some of this content useful. And if you did, I definitely invite you to stick around and subscribe. Everything that I talked about in this video will be linked down below in the description. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them down below as well. As always, thanks for watching, stay stoked, and I'll see you in the next one.